Alright, so there's some people that, are only obviously going to care about the results. How did the final parts come out? What are they actually for? And well, I'm here to tell you, they warp just a hair. I mean, I could probably fit maybe 2 or 3 dog hairs in there. But it's not even as much of a gap as these standoffs have in this motor. So, it's not perfect. I wasn't thinking that it was going to be perfect. But really, all my point was to illustrate that, for polycarbonate, especially for PA6, for all of your engineering materials, and your industrial materials that, people other than just your hobbyists might care about, I don't know that this is the machine. I mean, there's other machines out there for the same or similar price, like the Cheetah Tech Plus 4, which have an actively heated chamber and don't limit their bed to 100 degrees. Not that that would necessarily fix this, but it could. It certainly gives you more headroom to play around with compared to something like the P1S, where, most of the features that you would actually want are, limited for reasons that really don't make much sense to a business. I mean, a lot of people want to point out, the H2D, the X1E. Yeah, but those are like $2,000-$3,000 printers. I mean, for that you could get 2 or 3 or 4 even Cheetahs and print each one of these parts. Because it was a set of 4 of them. Print each one of these parts on its own machine, increase that reliability, increase that time to return on investment, because if I can get all 4 of these parts out in an hour versus spending 8 hours on the 4 of them on one printer, that's a higher level of productivity, and you're not going to get that from the H2D. Now this particular part did actually pop off the plate, such that you can see the effects of the warping on the top surface. I mean, even compared to the other side of it, same part. Whereas the rest of these, they didn't have nearly that issue. Now, you can't judge the flatness based on this steel plate, because this steel plate is anything but flat. So don't let it fool you. Don't let it fool you. It is unfortunately deceptive here. But yeah, I mean, this is okay. I'm fine with these parts. I mean, they're gonna work for what I need them for, and when I get done rebuilding the jalopy using this beautifully hand drilled steel plate here, handmade. Well, I didn't make the steel plate, but I drilled all the frickin' holes. I mean, I don't have a CNC, so all this is done with printed templates and layouts and the like. But yeah, I mean, these will work. There's no reason this part won't work for what I need it for. But could I have potentially saved some money and, gotten equally good or better results off of cheaper or similarly priced printers? Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I don't have a Cheetah Tech, so I can't speak for its print quality any more than, I can speak for the Prusa Core 1's print quality. But I do know that the Prusa Core 1 has a lot better customer service, quality control, and, well, maybe not quality control, but it certainly has better management features, which is something that a business would care about. Whereas, you know, things like a glass paneled front door, which costs more money than a plexiglass one and is just asking for you to bump into it and shatter it, is not something that a business cares about, right? Like, that's a premium feature that serves no purpose. It doesn't help really with insulation. It doesn't really help with vibrations or you know, sound dampening, which, I mean, you know, if you're gonna have like 20 or 30 of these in a warehouse, and you go to start the dryer and it wants you to, you know, manually walk your ass down there and take all the filament out the dryer and put it back on the reel so that it can rotate it 20 degrees every 5 minutes, you're kidding me. There's not a business owner in the world that's gonna fucking walk his ass down there and, you know, manually start the dryer. Like, what the heck? Now, supposedly that feature's, you know, coming in an update, but I mean, you know, you guys had all this time to, you know, write that software and push this thing out the door, you know. I mean, it was on pre-order, and even before that, you know, it was announced, so, you know, what have y'all really been doing with your time, you know, other than, you know, maybe marketing, right? I mean, you know, marketing is great, you know, every company needs marketing, but, you know, you gotta pay your engineers too, you know, you gotta get the features that people actually expect working first, in order to please your customers. You can't get them later and then, you know, save face with the customers that you've pissed off. I mean, you know, that's just really not a great way to start a customer, you know, B2B relationship, is, you know, not giving people the features that they paid for. You know, supposedly, you know, after me raising hell about it, and their, you know, support team, you know, they're going to have their R&D team look into having filament being able to dry continuously while printing, which is just complete and utter nonsense. I mean, you know, I understand for PLA, for PETG, for heck, their TPU, for AMS, those materials will get grabbed by the gears, the drive gears inside the AMS, and it will deform those materials, and it will jam. And you'll have to come down and you'll have to, you know, yank the filament out and unclog it, right? But not all materials will do that. And not all materials, even if they are in the AMS, will do that during a print, right? Like, say that I've got polycarbonate and PETG loaded in there, and I want to dry this, albeit at, you know, maybe an unideal temperature of 65 C versus, you know, 80 or 85 C. While it's drying, right? But this print doesn't contain any PETG. Well, I mean, you're not going to have any problems with the PETG just getting warm in the box. Like, as long as it's not being fed through the knurled rollers, it's not going to deform. Like, actively pushed. I mean, you know, the rollers are going to deform the filament by touching it, period. You know, anybody that's touched or taken filament out of their hot end, or, you know, touched the part of the reel that's been spooled back, you know, it's got that little, like, sawtooth, you know, jagged edge thing going on. Where, you know, just the knurled dies have, you know, imprinted that pattern onto the filament as it passes through. You know, I mean, that's perfectly normal, but no, yeah, they really need to have had these features ready to go. I mean, the fact that they hadn't even thought of adding a feature like that for materials like this is just silly. I mean, it's just complete and utter nonsense. I mean, I'm the type of person who prints these materials a lot, and I've come from a machine that I'm used to printing out of a dryer actively. Now, to be fair to Bambu Labs, that is a different experience, because when I have, you know, a dryer like this, or a dryer like this, and, you know, I've just got all this PTFE tube for the filament to go through, by the time it gets to the end of this, I mean, it's cooled back down, or certainly cooled down enough that it's not going to deform when it comes in contact with the drive gears of the hot end. So, you know, I personally have never encountered this issue before. However, even despite that, not all materials have that problem, right? Especially the materials that are more moisture sensitive and typically need to be dried out more often or at higher temperatures. Those materials do not tend to deform just because their glass transition temperature is usually much higher than the temperature that you're drying it at. Whereas with something like PLA and PETG, right, you know, you're drying it out at 50 or 55 C. I mean, you're almost there, right? And for your, you know, maybe cheaper, less expensive PLAs, maybe you're already there. You know, it just depends. And being cheaper doesn't necessarily mean it's worse filament. It just kind of depends. But yeah, I mean, you know, just out of the box, I mean, me knowing a thing or two about polycarbonate, you know, not having a fancy job in their R&D department or anything, I'm getting better results with their material on their machine than they are. And, you know, luckily I'm fortunate enough to know what I'm doing and be able to tweak this thing and tune it and get good, usable results. But, you know, evaluating this from the perspective of, you know, the average customer, like the type of person that, you know, notices that the silicone sock on their hot end just falls off sometimes in the print on their A1, so they just remove it, and then later on when they're trying to print something at 270 degrees, you know, and the hot end just can't maintain those temperatures, like they're confused. They don't know what the hell's going on, because from their perspective, this thing that was on there was causing a problem and they removed it and it worked better. You know, they had no concept of things like, you know, insulation and improving thermal efficiency and stuff like that, because, you know, that's not their job. You know, that's not what they bought the machine for. They didn't buy it so that they could go get their own PhD in thermodynamics and figure it out themselves. They bought it because they wanted something that would work out of the box. And this, despite its flaws, is a much better situation to be in at the end of 8 hours than this situation at the end of an hour and a half, right? 45 minutes. I'm not exactly sure when I stopped this, but I mean, it was already warping well before you get to the region, you know, where the build plate stops doing anything. I mean, the build plate has a gradient effect throughout the part up until about 40 or 50 millimeters, and I mean, really that's going to depend on the properties of the material and the geometry of the model that you're printing, right? Like how many walls, the amount of infill, the amount of top and bottom layers, stuff like that. You know, but about 40 or 50 millimeters, give or take, right? So, you know, I mean, you can even see here, right? So I left this part in here, so I cut the bed down after it finished to about 85 C, and I just left it overnight, and you can tell, you know, basically everything up until, you know, 10 millimeters off the build plate is almost fully annealed, whereas, you know, you get up here, and I mean, you can very clearly tell the difference in that on camera. I mean, just the way the light hits it, makes it very obvious, you know, where the effect stopped on this model. You know, now materials like PETG, right, you're not going to have that problem, but I mean, I've tried their PETG profile too, and, you know, it works fine for 0.4 millimeter nozzle. For 0.6 is terrible. It's actually really bad. I mean, it's worse than the jalopy, like the thing that this machine is, you know, evolved from, essentially. The precursor, if you will. Yeah, it's printing worse than that. And I mean, you know, I think we can all agree, you know, those of you that are subscribed and have seen some of my videos, that I put print quality as like the last priority, and really just playing around with the technology and, you know, trying to improve between, you know, this video and the next one is really what I'm trying to do, right? Like, it's not so much, you know, did I get the most flawless print ever, right? Like, sometimes it is, but other times not so much. But no, I mean, you know, it's not an enclosure thing, right? I mean, for really, really high-end materials like PEI and such, you know, you sort of need an enclosure. But, you know, even with polycarbonate, I mean, you can get away with just a draft shield and printing really slow. I mean, not like unreasonably slow. Like, I don't mean like 5 or 10 millimeters a second. I mean, you can if you want to, and, you know, you'll get some very, very transparent layers if you do, especially with this, you know, translucent type of material. Same thing with PETG, you know, but no, you don't need to go that slow. I mean, even just 50, 75, you know, try to keep it under 100 millimeters a second is really all you need. But, you know, Bambu Labs is trying to print this stuff at 300 millimeters a second and 260 degrees Celsius by default. I mean, what the heck? I mean, that's so bad that, you know, there is an elephant's foot on the top surface, like in multiple places on this model, because the warping is so bad. And that really just comes down to the fact that they're printing this material way too fast and way too cold. I mean, it is causing a tremendous amount of die swell from the back pressure and, you know, other things that come from trying to print a material like, you know, at basically PETG temperatures. You know, that's where the stringing is coming from. I mean, somebody left a comment, you know, oh, you know, your material is just too wet, you know, you stop being a dummy and just dry it out. No, that's not what causes the stringing. It's the fact that, you know, when you put that much, when you develop that much back pressure in your hot end, as soon as you retract and move the tool head to somewhere else on the model, I mean, that pressure is going to relieve itself. There's nothing that you can do to stop it, and that is what causes the popping and the stringing and stuff like this. And it really has nothing to do with the material being dry or not, because, I mean, this was printed from the dryer, same as this model, but the difference is this one, it was active the entire time, and this one, you know, I left it overnight, so, I mean, you know, it should have absorbed even more moisture and printed even worse, considering that I printed this at 290 degrees. But it didn't. I mean, it looks great. It looks even better than the Bambu Labs one, but, you know, that's the difference in knowing what you're doing and, you know, trying to use ChatGPT to program your slicer using vibes.